Hello and welcome to my basic Fram guide for Fire Emblem Engage Maddening. So in this guide I'm going to talk about Fram, what she's good at, what she's bad at, how much investment is required to get her online, as well as pros and cons of the unit. I'm also going to go over good early passives on her and equipment for her classes that she's good on early on. So Fram is basically a mage. She has decent magic growth. She has 25% magic growth, but when you factor in a magic class, she can easily hit 50 to 55% magic growth. So on Sage, she has 55% magic growth, which is respectable. It's not as good as Anna, but one of the big upsides of Fram is she has 55% speed growth. So she ends up being fast, which is useful. Now, she does have a lot of downsides. The main one is that other units outshine her, but she is fast. So, like, if you want to compare her to another unit that you should probably invest in, like Anna, she has way less dex growth, way less magic growth, slightly more speed. Like Anna has 50% speed, Fram has 55, so she has 5% more speed, but she also has 0 build. So on a magic class, she's not going to be getting any build increases. 5% build on fixed mode is a guaranteed 1 point of build after 20 level ups, which does happen throughout a playthrough. So getting those extra points of build allows you to be a little bit faster. So, okay, so how much investment does it require to get Fram to be viable? I would say it requires moderate investment. Using her as a healer, she's going to be getting a lot of XP for free, so you don't really have to feed her XP because she's kind of like the first healer you get until you get Jean and then eventually Anna, who can reclass or just equip Micaiah to heal. So she usually levels up without you doing anything, which is nice, but you do have to reclass her with a second seal to get her into a good class. Now, she can go on High Priest, and that's fine, but I think Sage and Mage Knight are just much better. So for level investment, I would say medium. All right, so let's talk about best classes. All right, let's see. Oh yeah, here we go. Change class. Okay. So for classes, she starts out as a Martial Monk, and she can progress into Martial Master or High Priest. I think between the two of them, High Priest is just better because it gets access to tomes. So you have staves, tomes, and fist if you want to use fist. I don't know that her stats are high enough to make good use of her punching things. From what I understand, it uses magic plus strength divided by 2, and if you look at these stats, on Martial Master, she has 10 magic and strength, so 20 total. So divided by 2 would be 10. And then on High Priest, she has 20 total, divided by 2 is 10. So if that's how the damage is calculated, there's really no upside to being a Martial Master, aside from its passive as being, it's a better passive. The self-healing with the staff is whatever. You can use it. It's not the best thing. Both of these passives are kind of not high impact. I would rather her be on Sage, which is what she's on currently. She gets better base stats. So she gets decent speed, some more magic. She ends up having 5 build. Now, if you want to make her even faster and more aggressive, I would say go the Mage Knight route because it gives her more move, it gives her more build, it gives her more speed. She does lose magic, but she also gains this Chaos style level 5, where if you attack enemy physical with magic, you just get plus 3 speed, or if you attack enemy mages with physical, you get plus 3 speed. So she could actually double things, and this kind of works with her speed aspect. So I think Mage Knight is probably her best class, and Sage is a good second. And then anything else you want to run on her, you could run her on Griffin Knight. This gets extra magic growth. I think it's like plus 20 or 25% on Griffin Knight, or it might just be 20. Let's see, Griffin Knight. I'm sorry, it's 15. So that would put her at 40% magic growth. She could use 11 sword on Griffin Knight and be reasonably strong. The big upside of Griffin Knight for her would be that she gets plus 20% speed growth on Griffin Knight, putting her at 75% speed growth and then 40% magic growth. She also gets plus 15 dex on Griffin Knight. Her dex is only 35, so this puts her at 50% dex growth. So Griffin Knight and Mage Knight, I would say, are her best classes. Now, this Griffin Knight would require 11 sword or a flame lance or a hurricane axe, but of the 3, I would say 11 sword is probably your best bet. Now you do only have 5 build, so she's probably not going to be doubling very consistently unless you either increase her speed a lot or her build to compensate for the weight of the Levin sword. The Levin sword is quite heavy at a weight of 11. The same thing is true for tomes. A lot of the tomes she wants to use late game on Mage Knight, High Priest, Martial Master can't use tomes, but on High Priest, Sage, and Mage Knight are quite heavy. High Priest, one of the downsides of it is you can't use Bolganon because it requires A. Or no, it requires B, I think. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I think it's B. Maybe you can use Bolganon. I think I'm thinking of Nova. So you can't use Nova. But Nova is probably going to be going to a different unit. Nova is a Brave tome that's very good, that deals high damage. But I do believe Bolganon is B. It's either B or A. I can't remember off the top of my head. But if it's A, High Priest is worse. But High Priest is also worse because it has less magic growth by not like a huge amount. You can use High Priest if you want to. I just don't see the upside. I'd rather be on Sage because you can deal more damage and you can also still heal. So I would rather do that. But yeah, High Priest is fine. And the nice thing about High Priest is she can progress right into it. You just need to meet the proficiency requirements. So you don't have to use a second seal on her. So it's a good stepping stone to Mage Knight, Griffin Knight, or Sage. For other classes, putting her on a martial class, I don't recommend it. You can if you want to. I don't know that it'd be the most optimal use of her. She has kind of low base strength, so it's not really going to be like high impact. She does have decent speed. Her strength growth is 30, which isn't bad. So you theoretically could put her on a physical class. I don't know how good it would be though. It's hard to say. I feel like she's kind of frail, like on the more frail side. I don't really know that I would want her on a physical. If you run her on physical, definitely drop a comment, let me know. But early game, I would rather her just be a Sage or a Mage Knight. And Griffin Knight, of course, is fine too. But you would have to craft a Levin sword from a steel sword. All right, so those are the classes. All right, so let's go over passives. So you might notice she doesn't have any passives on my playthrough. She starts off with low SP. So if you want to get her a 1k passive, you have to put an emblem ring on her early to increase the rate at which you generate SP. So if you want to get her to 1k quickly, she's going to have to take an emblem ring away from probably Saline or someone else. And even then, what you would probably want to get on her is Canter. So if you want her on Mage Knight, you probably want Canter right away. Momentum isn't bad. I don't know that she would be able to make huge use of it. I would say you want her to just kind of like pop in and then like kite, like hit things with magic and then pop out. But you could use momentum as well if you can get her to 1k SP. So you basically just have to equip an emblem ring on her immediately to start getting her SP up. Some other units you get later on just come in with more SP. Her and Clan have some of the lowest starting SP. Tome Precision's a decent cheap thing if she's on tomes. Getting magic +2 isn't bad. It's only 1k, so that's really not bad. So that's another good option. You can get Tome Precision 3 pretty easily. You just have to increase the bond with Celica. And Hit Avoid +7 is not bad. She does have lower dex. Her base dex is kind of low, so over time she might start having accuracy issues. So you might want to get this early so that as you approach endgame, her hit and avoid is a little bit better. You'd mostly be getting it for the hit. Okay, and then for things like Marth, obviously avoid +10 is decent. I don't know that she's super dodgy though. Speed does contribute to avoid, so she could potentially get dodgy over time. So making her avoid tanky could be useful, and you could always use an engraving to scale that as well. The staff mastery, these are decent, mostly for the increased healing. So you could run them. They're also very cheap. So getting Staff Mastery 2, for example, only costs you 300 SP, and it makes it so staves heal for +5 more. And it also increases hit rate on offensive staves like Freeze, Silence, Fracture, stuff like that. So this could also be a decent cheap thing. So I'm actually just saving for Canter right now, if you're wondering why I haven't bought anything. The Roy one's not really too useful. So that's pretty much it for passives. Build +3 could help her out later on. Now the nice thing about build plus 3 is you can get it early. So she could run this, and if you want, you could potentially dump 1k into build plus 4 if you want to get her on Levin Sword early. Like if she's a Griffin Knight build and you get her on build plus 4 with a Levin Sword, that would offset most of the weight of the Levin Sword, allowing her to double with it consistently. And the Levin Sword is actually very strong. So Levin Sword Griffin Knight Fram might be like an actually really strong build, especially if you run build plus 4. Now obviously speed is better, because build and speed just both offset weight. So like if you have 10, like let's say you have a character with 6 build and they're using a 10 weight weapon, right? The 10 weight weapon reduces their speed by 4. So if you just increase that unit's speed by 4, it's the same thing as having build plus 4. Except now if they use a lighter weapon, now their speed is increased. So it does the same thing as build plus 4, but there's also this upside of when you use a lighter weapon, now you have more opportunity to double because you're faster. So speed plus 4 is better, but you can get build plus 4 early. And it's still fine. You can always run both. So you could run build plus 4 with speed plus 4. Late game, right? Like as you get Lyn. So this could be really good. And with Griffin Knight, it would snowball her speed growth to insanity. 75% speed growth is 7.5 levels of speed per 10 levels on fixed growth. So obviously the 0.5, you wouldn't get that. Like you get that over time. It would eventually turn into another level as you level up. So for example, you'd get 20 level ups and you'd be looking at plus 15 speed. So that's pretty strong actually. So she could make a hell of a Griffin Knight with a build plus 4, build plus 3 skill. And build plus 3 is cheap. It's only 500 SP. So I could get that right now. I just need to waste bond fragments. Okay. So let's talk about equipment. I've kind of been like referencing it, but tomes, all right, so early on, you usually don't need to invest in tome units. They tend to 1-round armor anyways, and that's true of Fram. Like, I haven't been over-investing in her at all, and she actually just has a basic tome, and she's able to 1-round most armor, or almost 1-round it. So for early game, which is what this guide is for, I don't upgrade tomes at all, and there's like, you don't have to. They're still fine. You can if you want to. You can upgrade them maybe to like +1 or +2. I wouldn't waste too many resources on them. I don't really see the upside. There's like the mid-level tomes like Elfire. You could upgrade those, and those are actually viable to some degree in endgame. They're good because they're lightweight, so they double consistently. So if you don't have any build or high speed to offset high weight, or like the higher weight tomes like Bolganon, or the higher weight weapons like Flame Spear and Levin Sword, you can run Elfire with some upgrades so that when you can double, you can just run that, and usually doubling will deal more damage than a single hit from a higher might weapon. So it's good to have lighter tomes. But the build thing I think is good. So her main weapons would be Flame Spear and Levin Sword if you're going for the Griffin Knight route. Now Flame Spear is harder to come by and is more mid-game, but you could always switch her into that. I believe the Levin Sword is actually better, though, in terms of damage. So Levin Sword just seems to be pure upside. And also, the nice thing about Levin Sword on Griffin Knight is that it can break axe users. And it also bypasses armor because it's magical. So you hit right through enemy armor. The only downside of Levin Sword build archetype is that it doesn't do well against magic, but you could always just use an actual sword, like a steel sword or something, and just smack them, like smack an enemy mage. So she could be... Griffin Knight actually might be her best class the more I think about it, on Levin Sword. And all you have to do is just convert one of your steel swords to a Levin Sword. So let's go to Refine. Let's go to a steel sword. The game... So Diamant comes with a steel sword. The game hands you one in the resource pack, and I believe you can also buy one from the store. Yeah, because this Levin Sword was converted from a steel, so you do get 3 early on. But this is what it costs to convert it. So it's pretty accessible. I recommend donation level 3 as soon as possible for both the starting regions so that you can get as much iron and steel early on. It is worth it. It does cost you a lot of money, but you do get, I think, like 20 steel and like 300 iron if you hit donation level 3 in Brodia. So it actually is worth it. Plus you get a Wadao and some other stuff. So it actually is worth it. And then, of course, when you go back and do those paralogs in Brodia, that'll scale the rewards as well. So donation level 3 Brodia, I think, is actually metagame. Makes a lot of sense for getting early resources for upgrades. and Steel Sword, converting it into 11 Sword, pretty good. So that's pretty much it for Fram. If I were to give her a rating, I think I might have put her at C or B tier in my previous tier list video. I think she's actually an A tier unit because she doesn't require that much investment. Like, the only thing you really have to do is second seal her into a better class, and she just levels herself up from healing. So there's not much friction to using her. I did say it's like moderate. And it's moderate in that you could just theoretically just run Anna or Jean, who are much better. So she's kind of competing for that healer mage utility slot, which has a lot of competition, and the competition's fierce because Jean can snowball into insanity with his stat growth, and Anna has way better bases and can snowball your economy, which makes the game way easier by upgrading your units, getting more stuff, increasing donation levels when it matters to get more resources earlier on. So she's not a bad unit. I think she's just stuck in the shadow of two S tier units that do the same thing she does, but they just do it better. But that's it for this one. Definitely like and subscribe if you found this useful. Feel free to drop a comment as to how you use Fram. This obviously is aimed for early game. I'm not really covering emblems because the early game emblems are pretty straightforward. There's like 2 magic ones. I guess I'll touch on it briefly. So emblem rings that are good on her. Celica for damage increase for using Echo if you're using chain attacks, and Micaiah. That's really it. You could use Sigurd on her. I don't know that it would be insane. I mean, Sigurd with 11 sword is decent in some situations, so that could be okay. Martha on her wouldn't be that good. Leaf wouldn't be that good. Roy wouldn't be that good, unless you're running physical class, in which case she might be okay on. But yeah, that's it for this one. Peace.